As your hot air balloon ascends into the vast expanse of sky, a fundamental truth becomes apparent. The journey of transformation requires not only the flame of desire and the spark of awakening, but also a stable basket from which to witness the unfolding landscape. Without this foundation, even the most powerful fire cannot create sustainable flight. The most vibrant phoenix cannot maintain its renewed form. This essential foundation, this basket that holds, supports, and enables your ascent, is composed of your fundamental human needs, the building blocks upon which all higher growth becomes possible. Imagine a phoenix attempting rebirth without first gathering the sacred materials for its nest, or a balloon pilot igniting the burner before ensuring the integrity of the basket and envelope. The journey would be compromised before it began. Similarly, our quest for extraordinary growth must honor the foundational elements of our being, the essential needs that, when adequately addressed, create the stable platform from which transformation becomes not just possible but sustainable. In this chapter, we explore the architecture of these fundamental needs through the wisdom of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy, not as rigid stages to be conquered, but as interconnected dimensions of human experience that together create the foundation for flourishing. Like the balloon's basket, woven from many strands, or the phoenix's nest crafted from diverse elements, your capacity for extraordinary growth emerges from the integration of these essential aspects of being, from basic physiological requirements to safety and security, from belonging and connection to authentic esteem and recognition. When we understand and honor these foundations, we don't limit our growth, but rather enable it to soar to heights otherwise impossible. The balloon rises not by abandoning its basket, but by using it as the stable platform from which to witness the expanding horizon. The phoenix's transformation is enabled, not hindered, by the carefully prepared nest from which its renewal emerges. Your extraordinary growth likewise depends not on transcending your fundamental needs, but on honoring them as the sacred foundation of your continuing evolution, understanding basic needs as building blocks. At the most fundamental level of human experience lie our physiological needs, those basic requirements for biological functioning that form the foundation of Maslow's hierarchy. Like the primary structural elements of a hot air balloon's basket, or the initial gathering of materials for the phoenix's transformative nest, these needs create the essential platform upon which all other dimensions of growth depend. Maslow identified these basic needs as air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction, the fundamental requirements for physical survival and functioning. Modern research in neuroscience and psychophysiology has deepened our understanding of why these needs must be satisfied before higher growth becomes sustainable. When basic physiological needs are unmet, the brain's resources become focused on survival, activating stress responses that literally redirect blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex, the brain region essential for self-awareness, planning, and higher cognition, toward more primitive brain structures devoted to immediate survival. This biological response makes perfect sense from an evolutionary perspective. Like the balloon that must maintain adequate heat before directional navigation becomes relevant, or the phoenix that must gather fundamental materials before more refined elements can be integrated, our bodies naturally prioritize survival before growth. In our contemporary world, it's easy to assume that basic needs are universally met, at least for those engaged in personal development. Yet, subtle forms of physiological depletion have become endemic in modern life. Chronic sleep deprivation, dehydration, nutritional gaps despite caloric abundance, inadequate movement, and disconnection from natural environments. These deficiencies create an unstable foundation that compromises our capacity for sustainable growth. even when our conscious attention focuses on higher aspirations. Consider how a balloon pilot might focus exclusively on navigation while neglecting the integrity of the basket's fundamental structure. The journey would be compromised despite the pilot's skill or vision. Similarly, our growth journey requires attention to these basic building blocks, not as distraction from higher pursuits, but as essential support for them. Research in performance psychology confirms this understanding. Studies consistently show that elite performers across domains, from athletics to creative arts, business to academia, maintain scrupulous attention to these fundamental needs. They recognize that sustainable excellence emerges not despite attention to basics, but because of it. Exercise. Foundations assessment. Take time to honestly evaluate the current state of your basic physiological needs with this reflective inventory. Sleep quality. Beyond mere hours, assess the restorative quality of your sleep. Do you wake naturally feeling refreshed? Does your mind feel clear and present throughout the day? Do you maintain consistent sleep timing that aligns with your natural rhythms? Hydration patterns. Notice not just total fluid intake, but the consistency of hydration throughout your day. Do you experience subtle signs of dehydration, headaches, fatigue, difficulty concentrating? Does your urine maintain a pale color indicating adequate hydration? Nutritional balance. Beyond caloric intake, consider the quality and diversity of your nutrition. Does your diet provide sustained energy rather than peaks and crashes? Do you include adequate protein for cellular repair, healthy fats for brain function, complex carbohydrates for sustained energy, and diverse plant compounds for micronutrients? Movement integration. Assess not just formal exercise, but your overall movement patterns throughout the day. Does your body feel energized and capable? Do you experience joy in movement? Have you incorporated movement that supports both strength and flexibility? Environmental connection. Consider your relationship with natural elements: air, light, temperature, natural settings. Do you regularly experience sunlight and fresh air? Does your living environment support rather than deplete your energy? For each area, note both strengths and opportunities for enhancement. Then identify one specific adjustment in each domain that would strengthen your physiological foundation. These need not be dramatic changes. Often, small, consistent shifts create the most sustainable improvement in foundational well-being. Like a balloon pilot who regularly checks the integrity of essential equipment, or the phoenix that instinctively gathers the precise materials needed for transformation, this assessment allows you to ensure that your growth journey proceeds from a stable foundation, enabling higher dimensions of development to unfold naturally and sustainably. Beyond meeting basic needs, transformative growth requires a fundamental shift in how we relate to our physical being, moving from treating the body as a servant or obstacle to recognizing it as an essential dimension of our whole self, a source of wisdom and capability rather than merely a vehicle for the mind's agenda. Contemporary neuroscience has revolutionized our understanding of this relationship through research on embodied cognition. The recognition that thinking, feeling, and consciousness itself emerge not just from the brain in isolation, but from the dynamic interaction between brain, body, and environment. Our thought processes, emotional experiences, and perceptual capacities are profoundly shaped by our bodily experiences and sensations. This understanding mirrors ancient wisdom traditions that have long recognized the body as a source of intelligence and insight. The phoenix doesn't separate its transformative consciousness from its physical form, but experiences renewal as an integrated process encompassing all dimensions of its being. The balloon pilot doesn't transcend physical reality, but rather works skillfully with material elements, heat, air, atmosphere, to create the conditions for ascent. Exercise. Embodied wisdom practice. This practice helps you access the intelligence of your body as a resource for your growth journey. Find a comfortable position where your body feels supported and can relax without collapsing. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Begin with 3 deep breaths, allowing your attention to follow the full cycle of each breath. The expansion, the brief pause, the release, the brief pause before beginning again. Gradually expand your awareness to include your entire body, noticing sensations without judgment or analysis: warmth, coolness, pressure, tingling, pulsing, heaviness, lightness. When your awareness feels stable, bring to mind a question or situation related to your growth journey where you seek deeper insight. Rather than analyzing this question intellectually, simply hold it in awareness while staying connected to your bodily sensations. Notice what happens in your body as you hold this question. Do certain areas become more activated? Do you sense opening or constriction? Does your breathing change? Does temperature shift? Ask your body directly, "What do you know about this that my thinking mind hasn't recognized?" Then listen receptively, allowing insights to emerge not as thoughts, but as sensations, images, or impressions. Before concluding, acknowledge the wisdom your body has shared, even if its meaning isn't immediately clear. Express gratitude for this dimension of intelligence that accompanies you on your journey. Through regular practice, this exercise develops your capacity to access embodied wisdom, the knowing that emerges not despite your physical being, but through it. Like the phoenix that listens to the intelligence of its entire being when preparing for transformation, or the balloon pilot who feels subtle changes in the basket and envelope as valuable information, you learn to incorporate your body's intelligence into your growth journey, creating a more integrated foundation for transformation. Once physiological needs are reasonably satisfied, Maslow identified safety and security as the next essential layer of human requirements. The need for stability, order, predictability, and freedom from fear. Like the balloon's envelope that must maintain integrity to contain the heated air, or the phoenix's protected space for transformation, this dimension of safety creates the containment within which growth becomes possible. Research in developmental psychology, trauma studies, and neuroscience has deepened our understanding of safety's role in enabling growth. When we experience chronic insecurity or threat, the brain's survival mechanisms remain activated, creating a state of hypervigilance that consumes the very resources needed for exploration, creativity, and higher development. The amygdala, our brain's alarm system, overrides the prefrontal cortex's capacity for nuanced perception and response, limiting our ability to engage with life's complexities and possibilities. This biological reality explains why attempting to force growth without addressing safety concerns often leads to frustration or superficial change at best. The balloon cannot navigate intentionally when constantly responding to envelope breaches. The phoenix cannot complete its transformation when its protective nest is threatened. Similarly, our growth journey requires a foundation of reasonable security, not as luxury but as essential infrastructure for sustainable development. Safety manifests across multiple dimensions of experience, each contributing to the stable platform from which growth can unfold. Physical safety, the basic need for bodily integrity and protection from harm, including adequate shelter, neighborhood security, and freedom from physical threat or violation. Financial security, the stability that comes from having reliable access to resources for meeting basic needs, managing unexpected challenges, and planning for the future. Structural stability, the predictability and consistency of life's fundamental patterns, including reliable systems, clear boundaries, and dependable routines. Psychological safety, the freedom to express authentic thoughts, feelings, and needs without fear of rejection, humiliation, or abandonment. Health security. The confidence that comes from having access to healthcare resources and maintaining practices that support ongoing well-being. The relative importance of these dimensions varies across individuals and life circumstances. What creates sufficient security for one person might feel inadequate for another, based on temperament, past experiences, cultural context, and specific vulnerabilities. A common misconception equates safety with comfort or stagnation, as if security necessarily means avoiding all risk or challenge. This misunderstanding creates a false dichotomy between safety and growth, suggesting we must choose between them rather than recognizing their complementary relationship. Research in optimal development reveals a more nuanced truth. Growth occurs not in the absence of safety, but because of it. When we have a secure foundation, what psychologists call a secure base, we paradoxically become more capable of taking appropriate risks, exploring boundaries, and engaging with constructive challenges. Consider how the balloon's secure basket enables rather than prevents the pilot's capacity to explore higher altitudes and navigate complex wind patterns. The Phoenix's protected transformation space doesn't limit its eventual flight, but rather enables the vulnerable process of renewal that precedes it. In the same way, establishing sufficient security in your life doesn't constrain growth, but creates the stable platform from which authentic exploration becomes possible. Exercise. Security foundation mapping. This reflective exercise helps identify both strengths and gaps in your security foundation. For each dimension of safety, physical, financial, structural, psychological, health, assess your current state on a scale from 1, significantly insecure, to 10, optimally secure. Be honest but not self-critical in your evaluation. For each dimension, identify specific elements that currently contribute to your sense of security, specific vulnerabilities or concerns that create insecurity. One realistic step you could take to strengthen this dimension. Consider the relationship between these dimensions in your life. Does strength in one area compensate for vulnerability in another? Do certain dimensions affect you more significantly than others? Based on this analysis, identify the 1 to 2 security dimensions that, if strengthened, would create the most significant positive impact on your capacity for growth. These become your priority areas for foundation building. For each priority area, develop a specific, actionable plan with measurable steps and realistic timelines. This assessment acknowledges that perfect security in all dimensions is neither realistic nor necessary for growth. Like the balloon pilot who ensures essential systems are functioning while accepting that some conditions remain beyond control, or the phoenix that creates sufficient protection for transformation while recognizing that some vulnerability is inherent to renewal, you learn to establish adequate security without demanding perfection. The red boundary, establishing healthy limits. A crucial aspect of security involves establishing and maintaining appropriate boundaries. The red lines that define where your responsibilities begin and end, where your energy is directed or preserved, and how you regulate the flow of interaction between yourself and others. Like the distinct edge of the balloon's envelope that separates inner and outer space, or the phoenix's careful delineation of its transformation territory, these boundaries create the essential container for your growth journey. Research in psychological development indicates that healthy boundaries serve multiple functions. They protect your essential resources from depletion. They clarify expectations in relationships. They establish standards for how you'll be treated. They define your authentic values and priorities. They create the psychological space necessary for self-determination. Many growth-oriented individuals struggle with boundary setting, mistakenly equating it with selfishness or limitation. Yet boundaries, properly understood, don't separate us from others, but rather enable more authentic connection by clearly defining the terms of engagement. This exercise helps you identify and establish the essential boundaries that support your growth foundation. In your journal, create 3 columns labeled physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, and cognitive boundaries. In each column, reflect on questions such as physical. When do I need solitude? What kinds of touch feel supportive versus intrusive? How much physical space allows me to feel secure? Emotional. What feelings am I responsible for managing versus sharing? What kinds of emotional expression feel authentic versus performative? How much emotional intensity can I sustainably engage with? Cognitive. What information serves my growth versus creates distraction? When do I need mental quiet? How much input can I meaningfully process? Based on this reflection, identify 3 to 5 specific boundaries that, if consistently maintained, would significantly strengthen your security foundation. For each boundary, articulate the specific limit being established, why this boundary matters for your well-being and growth, how you'll communicate this boundary when needed, and what support you might need to maintain this boundary. This practice recognizes that boundaries aren't rigid walls, but flexible, semi-permeable membranes that regulate energy and interaction. Like the balloon's envelope that must be both sturdy enough to contain heated air and flexible enough to expand and contract, or the phoenix's nest that protects while still allowing necessary elements to enter. Your boundaries create a living container that both protects your essential being and allows transformative engagement with the world beyond yourself. Beyond physiological needs and safety considerations, Maslow identified love and belonging as the next essential dimension of human experience, our inherent need for connection, acceptance, and inclusion within relationships and communities. Like the balloon that rises through the cooperative relationship between heat and air, or the phoenix whose renewal occurs within the context of its species' ancient wisdom, our growth unfolds not in isolation, but through meaningful connection with others. Contemporary research has deepened our understanding of this fundamental need. Neuroscience reveals that our brains are literally wired for connection, with specialized neural systems devoted to social perception, empathy, and attachment. Studies in psychoneuroimmunology demonstrate that positive social connection influences not just our psychological well-being, but our physical health, affecting everything from immune function to inflammatory response, stress hormone regulation to cellular aging. This biological wiring reflects an evolutionary truth. Humans have survived and thrived not primarily through individual strength, but through collaborative capacity. Our ancestors depended on belonging for literal survival, and this ancient need remains encoded in our nervous systems and emotional architecture. A nuanced understanding of belonging recognizes the distinction between authentic connection and mere conformity or people-pleasing. True belonging doesn't require sacrificing individuality, but rather creates the secure context within which authentic self-expression becomes possible. Research by Brené Brown and others reveals that the deepest sense of belonging emerges not from pretending to be what others want, but from being accepted for who we genuinely are. This understanding resolves the apparent tension between belonging and authenticity. Like the balloon that follows wind currents while maintaining its distinct form, or the phoenix that honors its species pattern while expressing its unique embodiment, we can experience meaningful connection without surrendering our essential nature. The need for belonging manifests across multiple dimensions, each contributing to the social foundation that supports growth. Intimate connection. The close relationships that provide mutual understanding, vulnerability, and sustained support. Partnerships, deep friendships, and family bonds characterized by genuine knowing and acceptance. Community membership. Belonging within larger groups that share common values, purposes, or characteristics, creating a sense of we that extends beyond immediate relationships while still honoring individual differences. Cultural participation, connection to the broader patterns, traditions, and meanings that provide context for individual experience, whether ethnic heritage, spiritual tradition, or other frameworks that offer belonging within a larger story. Natural connection, relationship with the more than human world, the sense of belonging within natural systems and cycles that transcend purely human concerns, providing perspective and context for personal development. Research indicates that well-being is enhanced by having meaningful connection across multiple belonging dimensions, rather than relying exclusively on one form of relationship. Like the balloon that benefits from different air currents at various altitudes, or the phoenix that gathers diverse elements for its transformation nest, our growth is supported by varied forms of connection. This practice helps you assess and strengthen your belonging network. On a large sheet of paper, draw a circle in the center representing yourself. Around this circle, create 4 quadrants labeled with the belonging dimensions: intimate connection, community membership, cultural participation, and natural connection. In each quadrant, place symbols representing your specific connections in that dimension. These might be names of individuals, groups, traditions, or places. Position them closer or further from your center based on how significant or active these connections currently are in your life. Once you've mapped your entire constellation, reflect on which dimensions feel most robust and which seem underdeveloped, which connections feel most nourishing and generative for your growth, which connections, though present, may actually deplete rather than support you. What forms of belonging do you long for that aren't currently represented? Based on this reflection, identify 2 to 3 specific actions you could take to strengthen your belonging network in dimensions that would most support your growth journey. These might involve deepening existing connections that feel life-giving, establishing new relationships or community memberships, reconnecting with cultural traditions or practices that provide meaning, creating more consistent connection with natural environments and systems. This mapping recognizes that belonging, like all dimensions of Maslow's hierarchy, isn't a fixed achievement but a dynamic, ongoing aspect of human experience that requires conscious attention and cultivation. Like the balloon pilot who must continuously adjust to changing air conditions, or the phoenix that gathers new materials for each cycle of transformation. Your belonging network evolves throughout your life journey, requiring periodic reassessment and renewal. Throughout human experience runs what we might call the red thread of connection, the vital lifeline that links us to others across time, space, and difference. This thread doesn't erase our individuality, but rather contextualizes it, helping us recognize our unique participation in patterns larger than ourselves. Developmental research indicates that the most resilient individuals maintain what psychologists call a both-and relationship with belonging, experiencing themselves as both distinct individuals worthy of recognition and integral participants in meaningful collectives. This integration allows for what philosopher Martin Buber called the I-thou relationship, connection that neither dissolves boundaries between self and other, nor reduces others to objects for personal use, but rather creates a sacred space of mutual recognition and respect. This contemplative practice cultivates awareness of your interconnection with others. Find a comfortable position and close your eyes. Take several deep breaths, allowing your body to relax and your mind to settle. Bring to mind someone with whom you share a close, positive connection. Visualize a glowing red thread extending from your heart to theirs, representing the bond between you. Notice how this thread allows both connection and appropriate space between you. Gradually expand your awareness to include other connections: family members, friends, colleagues, neighbors, extending the visualization of connecting threads to each. Continue expanding to include your wider community, then to people you don't know personally, but whose lives intersect with yours through shared systems or resources. Finally, extend your awareness to include all beings, humans across the globe, other life forms, even future generations not yet born. Visualize the vast, intricate web of interconnection created by all these red threads, with each being both an individual node and an integral part of the whole. Notice how this web doesn't diminish your individuality, but rather contextualizes it, helping you recognize your unique place within a larger tapestry of relationship and meaning. Before concluding, reflect on how this interconnected perspective might inform your growth journey, not as isolated self-improvement, but as development that ripples outward, affecting the entire web of which you're a part. This practice cultivates what philosophers call interbeing, the recognition that while we experience ourselves as distinct individuals, we simultaneously exist as nodes within vast networks of relationship and exchange. Like the balloon that maintains its form while being continuously shaped by atmospheric conditions, or the phoenix whose individual renewal participates in its species' timeless pattern, your growth unfolds within contexts of connection that both influence and are influenced by your development. As we approach the threshold of self-actualization in Maslow's hierarchy, we encounter esteem needs, the human requirement for recognition, acknowledgement, respect, and a sense of capable contribution. Like the balloon that must achieve a certain altitude before broader vistas become visible, or the phoenix that must complete essential developmental stages before full transformation is possible. Our growth journey requires this foundation of genuine esteem to support higher development. Maslow distinguished between two interrelated aspects of esteem: respect from others, external validation, status, recognition, and self-respect, internal sense of competence, achievement, and worthiness. Contemporary research confirms this distinction while revealing their complex interplay, how external recognition influences self-perception, and how internal confidence affects how others perceive and respond to us. Neuropsychological studies have identified specific brain regions and networks involved in both self-assessment and processing social feedback, demonstrating how these systems develop and interact throughout the lifespan. This research confirms that healthy esteem isn't a fixed attribute, but an evolving capacity influenced by both psychological and social factors. Many growth-oriented individuals encounter what we might call the esteem paradox, the tension between desiring recognition while believing they shouldn't need external validation, or between acknowledging accomplishments and maintaining humility. This creates an internal conflict where the legitimate need for esteem becomes tangled with judgments about having that need. A more integrated understanding recognizes that esteem needs aren't signs of immaturity or ego attachment, but rather natural aspects of human psychology that, when healthily addressed, create the foundation for higher development. Like the balloon that requires a certain amount of lift before directional navigation becomes possible, or the phoenix that must develop sufficient strength before transformation can occur, our growth journey benefits from the stable platform that healthy esteem provides. Sustainable esteem emerges from a dynamic balance between external recognition and internal self-validation. Relying exclusively on others' approval creates dependency and vulnerability to criticism, while completely dismissing external feedback can lead to distorted self-perception and diminished growth. Research in resilience psychology suggests that the most robust form of esteem develops through what psychologist Michael Kernis calls optimal self-esteem, a stable yet flexible sense of self-worth based on accurate self-awareness rather than defensive self-enhancement. This balanced perspective allows us to value external recognition without being defined by it, and to acknowledge both strengths and limitations without excessive self-criticism. This reflective exercise helps cultivate balanced, growth-supporting esteem. In your journal, create 2 columns labeled External Recognition and Self-Validation. In the first column, list specific forms of recognition you've received from others that felt meaningful and accurate, acknowledgments of your contributions, qualities, or capabilities that resonated as true. In the second column, list aspects of yourself that you genuinely value independent of others' recognition, capabilities, qualities, or contributions that you would honor even if no one else acknowledged them. Reviewing both columns, reflect on: are there significant disparities between what others recognize in you and what you validate in yourself? Are there qualities or contributions you value that remain unacknowledged by others? Are there aspects others recognize that you have difficulty accepting or valuing? Based on this reflection, identify one way you could more fully internalize valid external recognition you've received. One self-validated quality you could express more visibly. One form of meaningful recognition you could legitimately seek. One self-critical pattern you could release to allow more authentic self-validation. This practice acknowledges that healthy esteem isn't about inflating self-perception or becoming independent of others' acknowledgement, but rather about creating a balanced ecology of recognition, where external and internal validation complement rather than contradict each other. Like the balloon that navigates through reading both internal instruments and external conditions, or the phoenix that integrates both inherited wisdom and personal experience, your growth journey benefits from this integrated approach to esteem. A particularly powerful source of esteem emerges from what we might call the red glow of contribution, the satisfaction that comes from offering your authentic gifts in service to something larger than yourself. Research consistently shows that esteem derived from meaningful contribution tends to be more stable and resilient than that based solely on achievement, status, or competitive success. This understanding points toward a developmental progression in esteem needs. Early stages often focus on recognition for attributes or accomplishments, being acknowledged for what we have or do. Mature esteem increasingly centers on contribution and impact, being valued for what we offer and how we serve. This shift doesn't diminish the importance of recognition, but rather transforms its source and meaning. Exercise, contribution, clarity practice. This exercise helps identify your authentic gifts and their meaningful expression. Reflect on times when you've experienced a sense of profound satisfaction from contributing. Moments when offering your energy, attention, skill, or presence created value for others or for something you care about deeply. For each example, note: what specific gifts or qualities were you expressing? What made this contribution feel meaningful or significant? How did this experience affect your sense of self-worth and purpose? Looking across these examples, identify patterns in your most authentic and satisfying contributions. Do they involve particular strengths, contexts, values, or forms of service? Based on this analysis, articulate 2 to 3 forms of contribution that utilize your genuine gifts rather than depleting your energy. Serve something you authentically value rather than fulfilling external expectations. Create the red glow of meaningful impact rather than just accomplishment or recognition. For each identified contribution, consider one specific way you could express or expand it in your current life circumstances. This practice recognizes that the most sustainable source of esteem comes not from what we get, but from what we give. Not as self-sacrifice, but as authentic self-expression in service to what matters. Like the balloon whose purpose is fulfilled through its journey rather than its mere existence, or the phoenix whose renewal serves the continuation of its kind, your unique gifts find their fullest expression and recognition through meaningful contribution to the larger contexts of which you're a part. The integrated foundation, preparing for self-actualization. As we conclude our exploration of foundational needs, we recognize that these dimensions, physiological requirements, safety and security, belonging and connection, esteem and recognition, aren't separate territories to be conquered sequentially but interconnected aspects of a unified foundation. Like the balloon's basket woven from many strands, or the phoenix's nest composed of diverse elements, your growth foundation achieves its strength through integration rather than isolation of these essential components. Maslow himself revised his initial hierarchical model in his later work, acknowledging that these needs operate less as a rigid pyramid and more as a dynamic, interactive system. Contemporary research confirms this perspective, showing how fulfillment in one dimension often supports development in others, creating positive spirals of integrated well-being. This integration prepares the ground for what Maslow called self-actualization, the expression of one's unique potential, the fulfillment of authentic purposes, and the ongoing journey of becoming more fully oneself. Like the balloon that requires proper preparation before embarking on its remarkable journey, or the phoenix whose careful gathering of foundational elements enables its extraordinary transformation, your growth journey benefits from conscious attention to these essential foundations, the foundation as dynamic support. A crucial understanding is that foundation building isn't a preliminary stage to be completed before real growth begins, but rather an ongoing dimension of the growth journey itself. Like the balloon pilot who regularly checks and maintains essential systems even while navigating new territories, or the phoenix that gathers foundational elements for each cycle of renewal, your attention to these basic needs remains important throughout your development. This perspective resolves the apparent contradiction between addressing foundations and pursuing higher growth. Rather than competing priorities, they represent complementary dimensions of a unified journey: the basket and the flame, the nest and the transformation, each essential to the other's function and purpose. Exercise, foundation, integration, mapping. This concluding practice helps create a personalized map of your integrated growth foundation. On a large sheet of paper, draw a circle divided into 4 quadrants, representing the foundation dimensions we've explored: physiological needs, safety and security, belonging and connection, and esteem and recognition. For each quadrant, note current strengths, aspects of this dimension that feel solid and supportive; present challenges, areas where additional attention or development would be beneficial; specific practices, activities or approaches that help you maintain or strengthen this dimension; integration points, ways this dimension connects with and supports the others. In the center of the circle, write a brief statement that captures your vision of self-actualization, how you understand your unique potential and purpose. Draw lines connecting each foundational dimension to this central vision, acknowledging how each aspect of your foundation supports your higher development. Based on this integration map, identify 3 to 5 specific foundational practices that you commit to maintaining as ongoing support for your growth journey. These might include a sleep routine that ensures consistent restoration, a boundary practice that protects essential energy, a connection ritual that nurtures meaningful belonging, a contribution approach that expresses authentic gifts. This mapping recognizes that extraordinary growth emerges not by transcending basic needs, but by honoring them as the essential infrastructure that supports your continuing evolution. Like the balloon that rises not despite its basket but because of the stable platform it provides, or the phoenix whose transformation is enabled by the carefully prepared nest from which it emerges, Your journey toward self-actualization is supported rather than hindered by conscious attention to these foundations of being, the red earth beneath the journey. As we prepare to explore the drive toward self-actualization in the next chapter, we carry forward the understanding that your growth journey doesn't begin in mid-air, but rather emerges from the red earth of these foundational needs, the rich, fertile ground from which your unique expression grows and flourishes. This foundation isn't a limitation to be overcome, but the essential support that enables sustainable transformation. The most magnificent flight requires a trustworthy basket. The most profound renewal needs a carefully prepared nest. Your journey of extraordinary growth likewise depends not on transcending these foundational needs, but on honoring them as the sacred ground from which your authentic becoming unfolds. The foundations are established. The basket is secure. The nest is prepared. In the chapter that follows, we'll explore the inherent human drive toward self-actualization, the call to become more fully yourself that emerges naturally when these foundational needs are adequately addressed. Like the balloon that rises when properly prepared, or the phoenix that transforms when essential elements are gathered, your journey toward extraordinary growth continues its natural unfolding, supported by the integrated foundation we've explored together: integration practice, foundation commitment. As we transition to exploring self-actualization, take a moment to solidify your understanding of these foundational dimensions through a specific commitment. Reflect on which aspect of your growth foundation currently needs the most attention or strengthening: physiological well-being, safety and security, belonging and connection, esteem and recognition. For the area you selected, identify one specific practice or adjustment that would significantly strengthen this foundation. Something concrete and sustainable that addresses a current limitation or vulnerability. Formulate this as a clear commitment, including what specifically you will do, when and how often you will do it, what support or resources you might need, how you'll monitor its impact on your overall foundation. Write this commitment in your journal, acknowledging that attending to foundations isn't a distraction from growth but an essential aspect of the growth journey itself. This integration practice ensures that the insights from this chapter become not merely interesting concepts, but living elements of your ongoing development. Like the balloon pilot who recognizes that basket maintenance is as important as navigation skills, or the phoenix that understands that nest building is as essential as transformation itself. You honor the foundational dimensions that enable and support your journey of extraordinary growth.